Thank you. I'm going to start off here, and then I'll hand it over to Lakshmi midway through. So I'm really excited to be here and really excited to talk to you about the launch of the Sustainable Landscapes Initiative here at McGill through this program. And when you think about landscapes, you think, well, okay, why is landscapes? Why am I excited about this? Why am I passionate about it? And I really think landscapes is kind of this unique perspective and scale of analysis. It's almost this Goldilocks scale, right? Like it's bigger than a plot scale, which is maybe where individuals usually make singular decisions, but it's also a lot smaller than, say, a national scale where maybe you have tangible problems, but they often get boiled down into aggregate statistics, right? And so landscapes present this perspective where you can really think about problems and think about solutions to problems and how to maybe enact them. Right? And so that's why I'm really passionate about thinking about, well, sustainable landscapes. And it also allows us to think about how to take people from a range of disciplines, really leverage the expertise that is here at McGill to bring together applied work, policy work, and try to better understand the systems that we want to affect. Okay, so we have a large sort of framework diagram here. I'm not going to go through this at all in detail, but I want to zoom in on a couple of points here. So, the vision that we have for this theme is to identify and facilitate opportunities to create equitable and sustainable landscapes. Right. So that's what we're trying to work towards. Right. And there are lots of different ways that we can do that. There are three core project areas that we've identified in which we want to try to enact that vision. Okay. So first, we're focused on projects that look at landscapes of production, okay, asking questions about how can we produce goods more sustainably. And I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail in just a second. Okay. Second, northern landscapes. How can we identify more sustainable pathways for Canada's north? And then finally, thinking about landscapes in transition. What are some sustainable transitions that can apply in very dynamic regions? And I'm thinking about economically dynamic regions, developing areas, places that are resource poor, that are moving into maybe higher income levels. How do we set those transitions in those places on a sustainable pathway? Okay, so these are the core project areas that we see this theme playing in. And each of those, go back here, each of these core project areas operate from the perspective of sustainability science. So it's implicit that integrated into each of these project areas are perspectives of economic, social, and environmental sustainability. Okay. We also have cross-cutting features that we hope to see operate within each of these project spaces. So we hope to try to co-produce some of the research questions that we have with policymakers. What are the most pressing needs and challenges that we have in our current landscape right now, and how can we as a community help address some of those? Those are maybe more medium-term goals. Those aren't going to be right off the bat, right? We have outreach efforts. We'll hold science shops. People can come into McGill, ask questions or workshop around specific issues, leadership training, doing web and social media outreach. But we also hope to integrate tools and ways of helping solve these problems. So these could be models or decision support systems, right? But we want to integrate these into all of the project areas that we're doing. So landscapes of production, what do I mean by that? So any landscape that we manage for extraction or consumption by society is a landscape of production. And so these could be things like agriculture, mining, timber extraction. And typically we manage these individual landscapes very well for one specific metric, right? So agriculture, we produce yields very well, and we're still increasing yields, and we need to keep increasing yields, right? Mining, we extract materials. But rarely do we try to measure them or manage them for more than just one metric. And so part of what we want to think about here in this landscapes of production are what are some of the other metrics that we might want to measure across the landscapes? And then what are some tools that we might be able to bring to bear that help us do that in a more integrated way? And hopefully, if we are able to address some of these interactions, this helps lead towards more sustainable landscape interactions. So landscapes in transition. So this is more of a thinking from a development perspective. And leveraging some of that expertise here at McGill But thinking about in these transitioning areas, there's lots of social changes happening, a lot of social issues that need to be addressed, but there are also a lot of climate or environmental vulnerabilities that exist as well, right? And these are all happening in the midst of dramatic economic and institutional changes. And so in these kinds of landscapes, there might be things that happen in one place dramatically could affect things that happen in another, or even across various countries. And so we want to look at these interactions among landscapes, things that might affect livelihood strategies or migration patterns, or how coordinated policy might lead to more sustainable outcomes in some of these landscapes. And to pick up on the last core area, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Shibman. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I'm Lakshmi Sushma. I am with the Civil Engineering Department and TICET. So I'm going to be talking about the other area that we are going to be focusing on within the landscapes theme. This is the northern landscapes. So it's a good idea to get started with the definition of what is northern. Here in Montreal, we are north, but we decided to focus on the Arctic and the subarctic regions, that's to say 50 degrees, north of 50 parallel. So that said, it's a very dynamic boundary. We may decide to push this boundary further south such that we can look at other interesting questions and technology, and also do some integrative projects with other themes such as the urban that's going to be presented following this one. So there are lots of changes happening in the northern landscapes. So we have to first of all think about climate. The figure that I've put up there is actually showing you the permafrost degradation for different scenarios. So what you see up there in red and orange are the regions that would be where permafrost would have completely degraded when the global mean temperatures increased by 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius respectively compared to the pre-industrial climate. So this is going to have socioeconomic and going to impact the socioeconomic and eco-environmental systems. So infrastructure is already being affected. So we have to take all these considerations into any planning that we make. Not only that, there are other changes that's happening in the north. You have vegetation migrating north as a result of warmer climate. You have retreating glaciers. What you see in these two panels, the top one is showing you the glacier fractions in current climates, and the bottom panel is telling you what might be the glacier fraction, say, in future climate, that's to say by the end of the century. And all this is going to have an impact on the hydrology, the climate, etc., and we have to consider all that. Not to mention changing extremes. Today is a good day to talk about that, I think. So what I have shown up there are projected changes to the number of hot days for summer, during summer, and this is corresponding to a particular scenario. This is one of the extreme scenarios, and you do see that the temperatures, the number of hot days is increasing by as much as 45 to 60 during summer. So these are important changes, and we have to consider all these when we are thinking about sustainability in the north. So with that background information, I'm going to talk about sustainable northern landscapes and what we plan to do within this MSSI. So initially, as I mentioned, we focus a lot on northern climate and land dynamics. How we are going to do this a bit differently is that usually we use a regional Earth system modeling approach. What we plan to do is to bring in human dimensions as well. This is not very often done. So once we integrate this, we'll look at the feedback between components of the Earth system. We'll pay special attention to look at extreme weather and climates. We'll be looking at natural resources such as water, wind resources, as well as solar radiation, because these are all important sources of renewable energy. So the information that we get from these studies will feed into northern engineering, I should say northern sustainable engineering. So what we are targeting for are reliable, sustainable, and resilient engineering strategies. So there are a lot of things you could do, but we decided to identify 3 sectors to get started with. That said, there's plenty of room to consider other sectors as well. This is going to be energy, infrastructure, and mining. So energy, within this sector, what we plan to do is to look for sustainable energy solutions for Canada's northern communities in particular. Northern communities are relying on fossil-based fuel, which is not only expensive, but it is also a point source of greenhouse gases. We look into the feasibility, mostly in terms of, how costly this is to integrate into the system, etc. Now, I forgot to mention, not all of this research we have to get started from scratch. There are already networks and projects that are doing this, so we might benefit from some of these networks that's ongoing. Not to mention here, there is an NSEC Hydro-Quebec Research Chair in Renewable Energy here at MECL, so we could benefit from some of those existing programs. I do mention the second item as infrastructure. So by infrastructure, I mean buildings, transportation. I've indicated safe water. What I mean by that is water and wastewater treatment plants and things along those lines. So we try to improve design, come up with sustainable design and new technology such that we can have sustainable infrastructure in these northern latitudes. The third item there is mining, and what we are going to work towards is to reduce the footprint of these mining activities in the north, and this will be done mostly through the development of new technologies and also through climate change informed decision making. So another important factor is the social aspect that comes in. So we have to take into account the social priorities. This is something we have to still develop on. So anybody in the audience, if you're interested along these lines, please get in touch with us. So bringing all these three different factors together, that's science, engineering, and the social sciences, that's going to be a powerful integration that we are targeting for. And this is towards the co-production of knowledge and technology related to sustainability. So what do projects look like? Brian already gave an idea. So what we plan is to bring together, like all the other themes, expertise, and know-how across MECL to contribute to this initiative. Definitely, there is a tremendous richness to be gained from leveraging all expertise and perspectives. There's going to be plenty of room for integrative and interdisciplinary research and education. To make this program a success, of course, we have to think about short-term goals, medium-term, and long-term goals. So short-term goals, we designed some activities within each core project area to benefit from existing projects and networks. We target for some precision white papers on sector-based sustainable science and technology. So we aim for some joint papers that would come out right away in the first year of this program. There's medium to long-term goals. We have to carefully design these activities, and they will eventually lead to innovation and integrated smart tools, which is going to be the legacy, at least from the landscapes team and also for the MSSI. And the ultimate goal is also to inform policy. So I think with that, I'll ask the next team to come forward.
Thank you very much, Professor Robinson and Shashma.